Alpha Kaelen Veric ran a callous thumb over the jagged 6-inch scar tracing his left flank. 6 years. 6 years since the Silverfang pack had been ambushed near the Silent Peaks, and 6 years since the most beautiful, reckless thing he'd ever known had saved his life. The scar wasn't just a mark of war, it was a ghost of sun-kissed skin, wild herbs, and whispered apologies under the moonlight. He was the alpha of the most formidable pack in the Northern Territories, built on discipline and strength. Yet, the memory of a poor, rogue healer named Iris had been the single, persistent flaw in his armor. He'd searched for her across 3 territories, using every resource at his command, not just because she was a powerful, intuitive healer whose gifts he needed, but because she was the only woman who had ever looked at him, the fierce, unyielding alpha, and seen just Kaelen. 6 years ago, she had patched his near-fatal wound with a concoction of mountain herbs, wolfsbane essence, used as an antiseptic, not poison, a distinction only true healers knew, and the sheer force of her own life energy. For one intense, stolen week while he recovered in her hidden, moss-covered shack, they had lived a lifetime. She was fire and rain, cautious yet utterly abandoned in his arms. Then, she was gone. No note, no explanation, just a perfectly made poultice of pain relief left on the floor and an empty space where her scent used to be. He had been convinced it was fear. Fear of his power, fear of his responsibility, fear of his world. He should have dragged her with him, branded her as his Luna the moment he could stand, but his warrior's respect for her freedom had crippled him. Now, Kaelen stood on a muddy bluff, the air heavy with the metallic tang of rain and the acrid smell of burnt pine. His patrol had been hit hard by a rival faction attempting to steal their newly secured hunting grounds. They weren't full wolves, just desperate, ragged rogues, but they fought with a desperate venom that had put 3 of his best fighters near death, including his beta, Torvin. Torvin's breathing is shallow, Alpha, reported Jarrus, the only medic they had, whose skills were limited to battlefield triage. He needs a proper healer, Kaelen. Not just stitches, but a restorative. Kaelen's jaw tightened. There is no other healer for leagues who can handle a wound this deep. Get them to the staging camp. We wait out the storm, then we ride for the territory border fast. He gripped the hilt of his hunting knife, his wolf scratching against the inside of his skin, enraged by their helplessness. Iris, the inner voice whispered, only she could fix this. He stood guard, a colossus of muscle and fur-trimmed leather, the low, steady rain masking the sounds of the deep woods. His focus was entirely on the perimeter, searching for any sign of a lurking enemy, the memory of his lost healer a constant, dull ache beneath his rage. The air was cold, the fog dense, and the situation desperate. Suddenly, a flicker of movement near the tree-line. Too small for a threat. Too quiet for a deer. Kaelen's senses honed in, his hand instinctively going for the weapon he knew would be useless against a small civilian. He braced himself, ready to snarl a warning to retreat. But the figure didn't retreat. It darted toward him, a splash of bright yellow amidst the dark greens and grays of the forest floor, completely unafraid of the towering alpha wolf standing guard. It was a child, a small girl, maybe 5 or 6, with bright, startlingly familiar eyes, framed by a messy braid. She ran right up to the mud-caked boots of the alpha of the Silverfang pack, stopped dead, looked up with an expression of pure, earnest determination, and delivered the impossible line that shattered Kaelen's universe. "Hello, sir," she chirped, the sound like a tiny bell in the desolate clearing. "My mom is a healer." Chapter 2, The Scent of Familiarity. Kaelen didn't move. He couldn't. The sounds of the injured men groaning nearby, the drip of water from the pine boughs, the rapid tiny thump-thump of the girl's heartbeat, it all faded into a muffled hum. His wolf, usually a roaring presence in times of crisis, was utterly silent, stunned into submission. He stared down at the child. She was small for her age, but her chin was tilted up with an unbelievable confidence that made his chest seize. Her hair was the color of dark honey, but her eyes, they were the exact shade of sea green that had haunted his dreams for 6 long years. "What did you say?" His voice was a low rumble, rough from disuse and the sudden, irrational hope that flared in his gut. He knelt slowly, careful not to loom, to look less like a beast of war and more like a man. "My mom is a healer," she repeated, her voice steady. She pointed a small, dirt-caked finger back toward the darkest part of the dense woods. "The one with the big red bag." She fixes people better than anyone. I heard your men shouting. She said I should offer. Offer. The word was so simple, so innocent, yet carried the weight of a monumental opportunity. Kaelen was an alpha. He did not accept unsolicited charity from strangers. He was a shifter. He did not trust humans, especially not isolated ones lurking near the volatile borderlands. But his beta was dying. And those eyes. He inhaled deeply, trying to catch her scent. It was faint, masked by the strong smells of pine sap and mud, but beneath it all, there was a whisper of something familiar, a subtle note of mountain thyme and wild orchid. The very scent of the healing poultice Iris had left him. No. It was just wishful thinking, a desperate hallucination brought on by exhaustion. And where is your mother, little one? He asked, keeping his voice deceptively calm. She's waiting by the rock bridge, the girl replied, shifting her weight. She sent me to ask. She says the wounds smell like the kind that need immediate attention. The use of the formal, medical-like term struck Kaelen. This wasn't just a child playing messenger. This was purposeful. He looked over his shoulder at Jairus, who was staring in disbelief. Jairus, you trust this? Alpha, with all due respect, we have no choice, Jairus rasped, nodding toward Torvin, whose breathing was now truly ragged. If the child is lying, we lose 10 minutes. If she is telling the truth, we save a life. And, that scent, Alpha. There's something unusual about the herbs on her clothes. Kaelen turned back to the girl. He felt a deep, instinctive pull toward her, a protective urge that made no logical sense. His wolf was stirring now, not in rage, but in a quiet, intense awareness. My name is Kaelen, he said, meeting her sea-green gaze. What is yours? Lily, she said proudly. And I'm 6 years old. Almost 7. 6 years old. The same age as the time he had lost Iris. The coincidence hit him with the force of a Silverfang warrior's blow. It couldn't be. It was impossible. She would have told him. She would have stayed. Lily, Kaelen stood up, the movement of his large body making the girl momentarily flinch, though she held her ground. You take me to your mother. Now. If she can heal my beta, she will be rewarded beyond her wildest dreams. If this is a trap. He let the silence hang, letting the implied threat settle. Lily simply nodded, utterly unfazed. It's not a trap, sir. She just likes to help. She spun around and darted back into the woods, a bright, dangerous beacon. Kaelen exchanged one final, grim look with his men. He knew he was walking into the unknown, driven by desperation and the lingering specter of a 6-year-old memory. But with the fate of his beta hanging in the balance, and the dizzying possibility that the little girl had just uttered the key to his broken heart, Kaelen Verrick did the only thing he could. He followed the scent of thyme and wild orchid, following the footsteps of a 6-year-old child. Chapter 3. The Hidden Sanctuary. The path Lily led Kaelen down was treacherous, a winding deer track barely visible beneath the mud and undergrowth, exactly the kind of route a seasoned rogue healer would choose. Kaelen, despite his size and injury, followed easily, his massive shifter form navigating the broken terrain with practiced ease. He kept his senses sharp, scanning for ambushes, but all he registered was the insistent, familiar pull of Lily's presence ahead of him. He was still grappling with the impossible math. 6 years. A rogue healer. Sea-green eyes. His mind was a battlefield of rational denial versus primal instinct. If she was Iris's, he would have smelled the connection, the blood tie. But Lily smelled only faintly of the wilderness and her mother's herbs. His control, he realized, was blocking his internal wolf from making the connection, terrified of the answer. We're almost there, Lily announced, stopping abruptly beside a towering rock formation blanketed in thick moss. A few yards beyond the mossy wall, partially hidden by a curtain of drooping willow branches, was a small, crudely built cabin. It was an ingenious hideout, the kind of simple structure that only blended in because it was built from the very materials surrounding it, and likely moved every few seasons. Kaelen recognized the clever, efficient construction of a survivor. A single lantern light cast a warm, yellowish glow through the cabin's small window. Kaelen could smell the strong, heady fragrance of medicinal roots boiling on a low fire, the clean scent of alcohol, and something else. Something unique, sharp, and utterly intoxicating. It was her. His heart hammered against his ribs, not from the exertion of the chase, but from a sudden, dizzying panic. This wasn't a battle he could win with claws or teeth. This was the moment of truth, the resolution of 6 years of yearning and rage. Lily pushed aside the willow branches and stepped into the clearing. "Mom. He's here. The big one. The one whose friends need fixing." The cabin door opened slowly. Kaelen froze, rooted to the spot. The air seemed to turn to ice, and the heavy rain stopped being background noise and became a roaring silence in his ears. Standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the lamplight, was the woman he had loved, lost, and searched for endlessly. She was older, perhaps a little thinner, her face etched with the worry of a hard life. Her dark hair, usually unbound, was pulled back in a severe braid, emphasizing the delicate bones of her face and the powerful, haunting presence of her eyes. Iris. The sight of her hit Kaelen with the force of a lightning strike, knocking the air from his lungs. The familiar curve of her lips, the way she clutched the hem of her simple tunic, the slight tremor in her hands, it was all her. And her scent, it was no longer a whisper. It was a roar, a dizzying, overwhelming cloud of him, of her, of their past, instantly locking onto his wolf's instinct. Iris saw Kaelen. Her sea-green eyes, which had held so much passion and comfort 6 years ago, widened in an expression of pure, unadulterated terror. Her face went bone-white, and the blood drained from her lips. "Kaelen," she breathed, the name a broken, ragged sound on her tongue. It was a statement of recognition, of fear, and of agonizing failure. In that single, fraught moment, standing between them, a living, breathing accusation, was Lily. 6 years old. Same eyes. Same scent connection to Iris. Kaelen's gaze snapped from Iris's terrified face to Lily's innocent, trusting one. The primal, protective instinct that had been a silent hum now exploded into a possessive snarl in his mind. She hadn't just left him. She had hidden his daughter. The alpha's pain was now a white-hot, consuming rage. The confrontation he had searched 6 years for was here, and it was infinitely more complex and devastating than he could have ever imagined. Chapter 4. The Price of Silence. The moment of reunion, drenched in the cold rain and illuminated by the weak light of the lantern, was shattered by the arrival of the injured men. Jairus and 2 other warriors stumbled into the clearing, struggling under the weight of the unconscious Torvin. The sight of the bleeding alpha's beta snapped Iris from her terror-induced paralysis. Her healer instincts immediately took over, overriding the fear of the towering, enraged alpha standing before her. "Inside. Now," she commanded, her voice suddenly sharp and authoritative, the fear gone, replaced by the cool focus of her vocation. She looked past Kaelen, her gaze entirely on the wound. "Lily, get the silver wash and the mountain rue ready. Kaelen, move. You're blocking the light." Kaelen, still reeling from the emotional shock and the confirmation of his paternity, found himself obeying. The pure alpha command in her voice, a command that should have been offensive, was strangely compelling. He stepped back, watching as she directed his men with a confident efficiency that was breathtaking. He watched her hands. Those small, gifted hands that had once traced the lines of his scarred back now moved deftly over Torvin's shredded flank. She worked with an almost brutal speed, cleaning the wound, stitching the muscle layers with fine thread, and then applying a thick, green poultice that immediately began to steam and work its magic. As she worked, she spoke only in clinical terms, asking Jairus-pointed questions about the enemy's weapons and the nature of the toxins. She was a professional, a true master of her craft, and Kaelen was mesmerized by the intensity of her focus. He watched Lily, too. The little girl stood beside her mother, an extension of the healer's will. Lily held the bowl of herbs steady, handing Iris the correct bandages without being asked, her small face mirroring her mother's focused concern. She was an apprentice, trained in the arts of saving lives since birth. The juxtaposition was maddening. His daughter, trained to be a rogue healer, living a life of hiding and poverty, instead of the pampered Lunaran training she should have been. When Torvin was stabilized and resting on a cot of blankets, his breathing deep and even, Iris finally straightened, wiping the blood from her hands with a linen cloth. She turned to face Kaelen, who had been a silent, menacing presence in the corner, his fists clenched so tightly his knuckles were white. "He will live," she stated simply, her eyes meeting his. "He needs rest, a week of broth, and the poultice changed twice daily. The others are minor. You did not answer my question, Kaelen growled, taking a step toward her. 6 years. You left me. Why? Iris took a step back, positioning herself so the small table and the cot containing his beta were between them. I left because I had to. And I told you, Alpha, we can talk when the blood stops flowing. Now your men are here, they need tending, and you are creating too much aggressive energy in a healing space. A shadow passed over Iris's sea-green eyes, deeper than mere guilt or fear of his wrath. It was a profound, ancient sadness. She is mine, Iris countered, her voice low but firm. And I protected her. You cannot comprehend the forces at work, Kaelen. The risk was not to me, but to her. You are a magnificent Alpha, but you are a walking target, and your history carries a darkness that I would not, subject my child to. Darkness? Kaelen scoffed. My history? What are you talking about? Iris took another step back, her gaze flicking nervously to the cabin door. You healed from a wound that should have killed you, Kaelen. But you never asked how I was able to accomplish that. You were too busy trying to claim me. There are prices for such miracles, Alpha. Prices that I had to pay alone, far away from your pack, to ensure your daughter's safety. The plot twist, the hint of a cursed consequence to his healing, hung heavy in the air. Kaelen felt a cold dread mix with his rage. He stared at her, seeing not just the fear of a woman caught, but the determination of a mother who had made an impossible sacrifice. Chapter 5. The Unveiling of the Curse. Kaelen stood in stunned silence, the full weight of Iris's accusation settling upon him. There are prices for such miracles. It was more than an excuse, it was a revelation that turned his entire worldview on its head. He was an Alpha, a warrior. He understood consequences. The price of war was blood, the price of power was vigilance. But a price for healing? That sounded like old magic, the kind of dark law his pack had long dismissed as superstition. What price? Kaelen demanded, his voice a tight, strained chord. Tell me what lie you concocted to justify raising my heir in a hovel, constantly running. Iris flinched at his tone but held her ground. It is no lie, Kaelen. When I healed you, the poison in your system was too potent. To save your life, I had to anchor your spirit to the earth using an old, forgotten type of energy transfer. It was risky, and it carried a powerful consequence. A curse, if you must call it that. A curse. Kaelen's wolf mocked the word, yet his heart hammered a fearful rhythm. The magic that saved you needed an anchor for its residual power. If I had stayed with you, had I been bound to the pack, the magic would have focused on the next powerful source of life energy near you. Your heir. Iris's eyes filled with sudden, intense pain. Do you think I wanted to leave you? I loved you. But if I stayed, Lily would have been born cursed, a siphon for the unstable magic I used to save you. I had to break all ties to your pack, to your power, to protect her. I had to disappear. Kaelen looked at Lily, who was now curled up by Torvin, her small hand resting trustingly on his muscular arm. She was perfect, bright, and 6 years old, the exact timeline of the danger. He had to concede, the logic, however insane, resonated with a deeper primal fear. Iris had always been steeped in the deep magic of the earth. He was the one who had been dismissive. And you never thought to send word? He pushed, the anger giving way to a raw, gaping hurt. A coded message? Anything, to tell me I had a daughter. A message would have led your relentless search efforts to me, Iris whispered. And with you comes the curse. Every year, I have to perform a binding ritual to keep the residual power locked away. And every year, that ritual gets harder. I didn't hide her out of spite, Kaelen. I hid her out of survival. I hid her to give her the life she deserved, free from the dark cost of an Alpha's healing. The truth, or at least a powerful version of it, hung heavy in the air. Kaelen looked at the woman before him, no longer seeing a betrayer, but a protector. She had sacrificed their love, her comfort, and her connection to her mate to ensure their child's safety. The intensity of her mother's love was a deeper, stronger force than his Alpha control. Show me, Kaelen said, his voice dropping to the intimate tone she remembered. Show me the proof of this magic. I need to understand what you have done. Iris slowly nodded, relief and resignation warring in her eyes. There is a reason I can't stay in one place for long. The residue needs a vessel, an outlet. And that vessel is finally reaching its limit. She pushed aside a heavy curtain leading to the back of the small cabin. As she stepped past the threshold, the dim light caught her lower back, revealing a mark that hadn't been there 6 years ago, a swirling, dark crescent moon scar, pulsing with a faint, unsettling violet light against her pale skin. This is the price, she stated, her voice trembling slightly. It is drawing too much now. That is why I sent Lily. I needed the protection of a large, powerful wolf. I needed your protection, Alpha Kaelen. Not for my life, but for the next ritual. I cannot do it alone anymore. And if it fails, I won't be the only one who suffers the consequences. Kaelen felt a terrifying coldness seep into his bones, a feeling more dangerous than any enemy blade. He was an alpha who commanded respect, but he was also a man deeply indebted, and now, he was terrified for the mother of his child. The sweet, innocent beginning of their reunion was now steeped in the dark mystery of a shared, life-threatening curse. He was here to claim his daughter and his mate, but it seemed he had arrived just in time to save them from a destiny he himself had created. The romance would have to wait, the curse demanded action. Chapter 6. The Weight of the Mark. Kaelen's initial rage had been a shield, but the sight of the dark, throbbing crescent moon on Iris's lower back melted it into a profound, chilling fear. He stepped closer, his alpha senses confirming the terrifying truth. This was no natural scar. It pulsed with an alien, cold energy, vibrating against the sheer force of his wolf's power. Turn around, he commanded, his voice now stripped of anger, replaced by the deep, protective rumble of a mate confronted by danger. Iris hesitated, but the urgency in his eyes compelled her. She turned her back to him completely, pulling the simple linen tunic down to her waist. The scar, no bigger than his palm, was a canvas of terrifying, contained power, a swirling vortex of black and deep violet light that pulsed like a secondary, failing heart. Kaelen reached out a trembling hand and gently traced the periphery of the scar. The moment his skin touched hers, a shocking surge of cold energy shot up his arm, making his internal wolf snarl in pain and warning. The scar responded to him, the violet light intensifying, pushing against his essence. "What is this?" he whispered, pulling his hand back as if burned. "The anchor," Iris explained, her voice tight with suppressed pain. "When I anchored your spirit to survive the silver-poisoned wound, I had to create a vessel for the residual, unstable energy. It's a siphon, Kaelen. It draws from my life force to stabilize yours. Every year, I perform a transfer ritual, a binding, to move the built-up energy into a non-living, crystalline container. But this year, it's too strong. The binding failed a month ago. It's desperate now." "Desperate how?" "It's not just feeding on me anymore. It's searching for an outlet, for a compatible source to continue its stability," she said, finally turning to face him, her eyes burning with an almost feverish intensity. "That source is Lily. She is our daughter, our blood, and carries the genetic echo of your tremendous power. The magic is starting to bleed through the protective wards I placed on her." Kaelen's gaze snapped to his daughter, still asleep near the stabilized beta, a tiny hand tucked under her chin. The thought of that dark power touching her innocent, vibrant life sent a wave of pure, savage fury through him, but this time, the fury was directed at the situation, not at Iris. "I need details, Iris," he insisted, grabbing her shoulders, his thumbs gently rubbing the sharp points of her collarbones. "How do we stop it? What did you mean, you need my protection?" "The vessel is full," she explained, gesturing toward the cabin's hearth, where a large cracked quartz crystal lay uselessly. "We need a massive transfer of energy to stabilize the mark long enough to prepare a new, stronger vessel. The old lore states that only the power of a true mate, a bond of equal strength, can safely contain the initial, volatile discharge of this type of magic without dying. It needs your alpha energy, Kaelen. It needs us." The reality of their situation hit Kaelen with the force of an avalanche. She hadn't left him out of fear of his pack or his life, she had left him to shield their unborn child from a magical consequence of his survival. And now, to finish the job, to save herself and Lily, she needed to be bound to him again, magically, physically, irrevocably. He looked at her sea-green eyes, no longer seeing the terrifying distance of a rogue, but the selfless courage of a mother and a healer who had walked through hell alone. The alpha in him realized, with stunning clarity, that this was his greatest battle, and his greatest redemption. He wouldn't just protect her, he would join her in the magic. He would claim his mate and his child in one breath. "You should have trusted me," he murmured, his thumb tracing the curve of her jaw, the sorrow in his voice thick and heavy. "We will find the strongest vessel in the Northern Territories. We will perform this ritual together. And you will never leave my sight again." He pulled her into a fierce embrace, not a kiss of passion, but a crushing, protective promise, burying his face in the wild scent of her hair, marking her as his in the only way that mattered now, survival. Chapter 7: A Father's Claim. The morning after the reunion was quiet, heavy with the weight of unspoken history and the silent threat of the curse. Kaelen had spent the early hours on guard, his senses tuned to the sleeping figures inside the cabin. He needed to talk to Lily, to claim his daughter not with authority, but with love. When the small girl finally stirred, crawling out from the blankets by Torvin, she blinked up at Kaelen with those familiar, unnerving sea-green eyes. She was still just an earnest child, not yet aware of the life-altering drama unfolding around her. "Good morning, sir," she said, her voice a little sleepy. "Is your friend better?" Kaelen knelt, bringing himself to her level. He was a giant of a man, and kneeling always felt unnatural, but with Lily it felt right. "He is, Lily. And you and your mother made that possible." "Mom is the best healer," Lily stated simply, her small chest puffing out with pride. "She is," Kaelen agreed, a soft smile touching his lips. He reached into the inner lining of his weathered leather tunic, pulling out a small, heavy object. It was a necklace, a simple leather cord threaded through a polished, silver wolf's head, the emblem of the Veric line, passed down to the Alpha's heir. "Lily, my name is Kaelen Veric. Do you know what a Veric is?" Lily shook her head, watching the silver wolf gleam in the weak cabin light. "A Veric is the head of the Silverfang pack. We are wolves, we are strong, and we protect everything that is ours," Kaelen explained, his voice low and solemn. He held up the silver wolf. "This is our crest. And you, Lily, are a Veric. I am your father." Lily didn't recoil. She didn't look shocked or confused. Her small, intuitive mind seemed to process the revelation with the simplicity of a self-evident truth. She looked up at his fierce, scarred face, then at her own small hand, and finally back to the silver wolf. "My eyes are like yours," she observed quietly. "Mom always said I had the wild eyes of the sea, but they look like yours." Kaelen felt a powerful, visceral clench in his chest. He reached up, gently brushing a stray lock of hair from her cheek. "They are exactly like mine, little wolf." He placed the necklace in her hand. "This means you belong to me, and I belong to you. We are family. My blood, my heart, my heir." Lily's small fingers closed around the cold metal. "Will we be safe now? Mom said we have to hide because the shadow power is bad. Can you stop the shadow power, Daddy?" The title, Daddy, ripped through Kaelen's composure. It was everything he'd missed, everything he'd been denied. He pulled her into a gentle but firm hug, inhaling the innocent scent of her childhood mixed with his own faint alpha scent. "Yes, little wolf. I will stop the shadow power. And no one will ever make you hide again." Iris watched the exchange from the doorway, a mug of steaming herbal tea clutched in her hand. Tears blurred her vision. 6 years of loneliness and fear dissolved in the raw, powerful connection between father and daughter. She had done the right thing by hiding, but the cost had been their love and Kaelen's rightful joy. Seeing him claim Lily with such tenderness was both a beautiful realization and a crushing regret. Kaelen met Iris's gaze over Lily's head. His eyes were hard, resolute. He lifted his chin in a silent command. "We are a family now, and we are leaving." "Lily," Kaelen said, pulling back, keeping one hand securely on her small shoulder. "We are going home. To my pack. To the Silverfang compound. Your mother and I need to stop the shadow power, and we need the things there to help us. It's a very long ride. Are you brave enough to come with us?" Lily looked up at Kaelen's face, then at the silver wolf in her hand, and then to her mother, who offered a small, reassuring nod. "If my mom goes, I go," Lily announced with the authority of a future Luna. The path forward was clear. The only place powerful enough to house the final, necessary ritual was the Alpha's territory, where the magic of their ancestors still lay dormant, waiting to be used. Chapter 8: The Road to Silverfang. The journey back to the Silverfang territory was a 20-hour ride made arduous by the rough terrain and the need to protect the still-recovering Torvin. They traveled fast, Kaelen setting a brutal pace on horseback, his internal wolf coiled and vigilant. Iris rode beside him, Lily nestled securely in front of her, the silver wolf pendant clutched in her hand. The forced proximity was an agonizing study in unspoken desire and lingering hurt. They spoke only in clipped sentences, about the route, about Torvin's recovery, about the increasing difficulty of keeping the magical scar stable. They avoided the 6 years of separation, the depth of their love, and the terrifying future that awaited them. Kaelen watched Iris constantly. The tension was taking its toll. The vibrant color in her skin was muted, and the scar on her back sometimes pulsed visibly through her tunic. He noted her tireless care for Lily, how she pointed out specific herbs in the woods, how she taught the child to listen to the whispers of the wind, lessons of a true healer and protector. During a necessary stop in the dead of night, while the others slept, Kaelen took the watch. The moon was obscured by thick clouds, and the woods were silent save for the crackling of their small fire. He felt Iris approach long before she spoke, her scent of mountain thyme and old magic a potent balm to his frayed nerves. "You should rest," he said, not turning, his voice low. "The mark needs your energy." "The mark is less demanding when I am near you," she confessed, stepping closer, until she was standing just behind him. "Your alpha power. It acts as a secondary buffer. I haven't felt this stable in years. That's why the ritual must be performed at your compound. It's the highest concentration of stabilizing alpha energy in the territory." He finally turned, his eyes piercing the darkness to find hers. "You told me you were afraid of my power. That my history carried a darkness that would harm Lily. Was that the only reason you ran?" Iris sighed, the sound a mixture of exhaustion and profound sadness. "I saw what the magic did to me, Kaelen. The price it demanded. I looked at my unborn child and saw the future, a life tethered to a dark, unstable power, living in the shadow of a pack's constant threats. You are magnificent, Alpha. Your loyalty and love are absolute. But your world is defined by war. I was poor, unattached, a ghost. I could offer Lily only a life of obscurity and peace. I chose obscurity over danger." "You chose not to trust me," Kaelen corrected, a flash of the old pain in his eyes. "You judged the Alpha and denied the man. I would have moved mountains for you, Iris. I would have built a hidden castle where no threat, human or magical, could touch you or her." "I know that," she whispered, her hand rising instinctively to brush the jagged scar on his flank, the scar she had saved. "And I carry the guilt of that denial every day. But I had to save her life first, Kaelen. I couldn't risk the magic's instability during the birth. I couldn't risk your enemies finding out about the mark and using it against you. I had to pay the price and wait for the chance to break the curse entirely." Kaelen leaned down, closing the small gap between them, his large hands settling on her hips. He lowered his head until their foreheads touched. The air between them crackled with unspent desire and the powerful, binding magic of their shared fate. "We stop running now, Iris," he stated, his breath warm against her skin. "We face the curse, and we face the pack. I need you to trust me completely this time. You are my mate, and the mother of my daughter. You will walk into my compound with your head held high." He held her close for a long moment, simply breathing her in, rememorizing the unique scent of her. When he pulled back, the look in his eyes was possessive and terrifyingly tender. "We ride at dawn. And tomorrow, you meet the Silverfang pack." Chapter 9: The Beta's Loyalty and Suspicion. The massive wooden gates of the Silverfang compound rose like a formidable fortress against the cold dawn sky. Kaelen rode at the head of the small column, his presence a statement of overwhelming authority. Behind him, Iris sat tall, Lily nestled safely in her lap, both of them dwarfed by the pack's powerful beta, Torvin, who rode on Kaelen's other flank. The pack warriors assembled in the courtyard, a formidable group of hardened shifters, their eyes sharp with curiosity and skepticism. They had heard whispers of the Alpha's mission, the injured men, and the return of a mysterious woman and child. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken questions. Kaelen dismounted, his movements radiating Alpha control. He went first to Iris, helping her and Lily down. He did not let go of Iris's hand, the gesture a clear, visible claim. Torvin, newly recovered thanks to the healing, stepped forward, his massive frame shielding them slightly from the pack's scrutiny. Alpha Kaelen, Torvin announced to the assembled pack, his voice booming and firm. We were ambushed. We owe our lives to the unprecedented power of this healer. She saved me from certain death and stabilized the others. Without her, the Silverfang line would have lost its beta. His words settled the initial hostility. Gratitude for a life saved was a powerful currency in the pack hierarchy. But the questions remained. Who was this tiny, non-shifter child who looked so much like their Alpha, and why was the Alpha holding the woman's hand with such fierce possessiveness? Kaelen stepped forward, his eyes sweeping over his pack, challenging any hint of dissent. 6 years ago, I lost my heart to this woman. Iris is the best healer in the territories, and a woman of unimaginable courage. She is the reason I survived the Silent Peaks ambush. He paused, his gaze locking onto his daughter. He reached down and gently guided Lily forward, pulling her out from behind Iris. Lily, wearing the silver wolf pendant over her small tunic, stood before the entire pack, her sea-green eyes wide but fearless. This is Lily, Kaelen declared, his voice ringing with pride and finality. She is my daughter. She is the Veric heir. And Iris, her mother, is my mate and your future Luna. The courtyard erupted in a collective, stunned silence. A child. An heir. A Luna who was not of the pack, who had appeared from nowhere. Torvin, however, stepped forward again, placing a hand on Lily's small shoulder. He had seen the truth in his Alpha's eyes, and he had felt the power of Iris's hands. He spoke quietly, but his words carried the full weight of a loyal beta. I witnessed the pain in our Alpha's heart when he searched for her, Torvin said, addressing the pack. Now he has found his family, and they are facing a threat that surpasses any enemy blade. This is not a time for questions or doubt. This is a time for loyalty. We protect the Luna and the heir, no matter the cost. Iris watched Torvin's act of loyalty, a silent gratitude shining in her eyes. His defense had neutralized the immediate threat of pack rejection. As Kaelen led Iris and Lily toward the Alpha's house, his grip on Iris's hand tightened. Torvin believes in us, he murmured. Now, we show them that my healer is a force to be reckoned with. Where is the vault? We need to begin our research, Iris. Now. Chapter 10. The Vault of Ancient Lore. The Alpha's quarters were a study in raw power and ancient comfort, high vaulted ceilings, rough-hewn timber, and furs piled high. But Kaelen didn't take Iris to his bedroom. He led her down a set of hidden stairs, deep beneath the compound, to the pack vault, the repository of Veric history, lore, and ancestral magic. The vault was a cold, circular chamber carved directly into the stone, radiating a faint, protective energy. Along the walls were scrolls, ancient leather-bound books, and pedestals holding sacred artifacts. The air was dry and smelled of old parchment and residual power. The greatest concentration of magic is here, Kaelen explained, gesturing to the shelves. I believe we can find the perfect vessel here. And perhaps, the full, original text of the ritual you used 6 years ago. Iris, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the power she had abandoned, moved immediately to the oldest-looking section of scrolls. Lily was left under the careful watch of the beta's youngest sister, a gentle healer in training, but Iris's mind was entirely on the task. Hours passed. The only sound was the rustle of parchment and their labored breathing. Finally, Iris gave a gasp, her hand trembling as she pointed to a scroll, its edges disintegrating with age. This is it, she breathed. The ritual of the forced transfer. It's a forbidden practice, Kaelen. It binds the healing magic to the life force of the healer's partner, demanding they complete the ritual together or face a mutual decay. Kaelen read the translated lines she pointed to, his expression turning grim. The text spoke not of a curse on the child, but a bond of mates. The unstable magic was designed to fuse the energies of the healer and the one healed, forcing them into an unbreakable, permanent union to stabilize the immense power. I used this ritual to save your life, Iris whispered, the full terror of her sacrifice finally laid bare. But the price wasn't just my pain. It wasn't just the threat to Lily. If I had stayed, Kaelen, the bond would have solidified automatically. I would have been forced to be your mate, not by choice or love, but by magic. I left because I couldn't accept a bond rooted in coercion, even if it was you. I had to wait until the magic was weak enough to break the bond permanently. Kaelen stared at the text, the revelation hitting him like a physical blow. The magical cost was a forced mating. He looked at Iris, seeing the fear in her eyes was not just of the curse, but of losing her free will. So, the ritual you need to perform now, Kaelen stated, his voice dangerously soft, will not just transfer the power. It will either save your life and break this terrifying bond, or it will fail, and we will be bound together forever, not by love, but by the cold, unforgiving hand of old magic. Iris nodded slowly, tears welling up in her eyes. That is the plot twist, my alpha. If we fail, you will be mated to me, and I will lose the last choice I have left. We must not fail. We must break this bond. Chapter 11. The Choice of Mates. The cold, unforgiving air of the vault seemed to hum with the tension between them. Kaelen looked at the ancient script, then at the tear tracks glistening on Iris's cheeks. The original curse, the fear of harming Lily, had been a devastating maternal sacrifice. This revelation, however, was a choice that cut to the core of their relationship, freedom versus destiny. You risked your life for 6 years to avoid being forced to be my mate, Kaelen stated, his voice devoid of emotion, making it all the more terrifying. I risked my life to choose my own destiny, Iris corrected, lifting her chin, her sea-green eyes flashing with fierce conviction. I love you, Kaelen. I did then, and I do now. But I would not, could not, be commanded by magic. I needed to know, truly know, that you chose me, and I chose you, free of any binding force. If I had stayed, the magic would have made us one, regardless of our feelings. I needed a clean break to preserve the possibility of a true bond. Kaelen felt a slow, agonizing, understanding dawn in his heart. His alpha nature demanded dominance, but his love for Iris demanded respect for her unique, powerful spirit. She was not a possession, she was his equal, and she had fought for her right to choose him. He pushed the heavy tome aside, the loud thump echoing in the vault. The ritual, he said, focusing on the immediate threat. It requires a new vessel. The text says it must be a crystal of immense purity, capable of containing the unstable magic of 2 shifters for a decade. Do we have anything like that here? Iris was already running her hands over the various artifacts. She paused at a large, intricately carved pedestal holding a magnificent, baseball-sized amethyst crystal that pulsed with a slow, inner light. This, she whispered, her fingers barely touching the stone, this is an ancestral memory keeper. It's attuned to Veric energy. If we can purify it and focus your alpha power, it can serve as the vessel. Kaelen stepped up to the pedestal, reaching for the crystal. The moment his fingers brushed the stone, the crystal flared, the purple light intensifying to a blinding white. He recoiled instantly. It rejects my touch, he noted grimly. It recognizes me as alpha, but not pure enough to be the vessel. It must be purified by the one who intends to pour her entire life energy into it, Iris stated, her voice quiet but firm. She took a deep breath, focusing all her energy. The dark crescent on her back began to throb, the violet light pushing against her skin. She reached out and grasped the crystal. The moment her hands closed around the amethyst, the dark, angry violet of her scar transferred into the stone, swirling with the crystal's pure white light. The amethyst's light dimmed, absorbing the toxic magical residue like a sponge. This is the vessel, she confirmed, pulling her hands away, her chest heaving with exertion. We perform the ritual tonight. The mark is too active, it won't wait. We need a blood bond, your alpha essence, and a circle of protective pack power. And the consequence? Kaelen asked, looking into the depth of her sea-green eyes, searching for the slightest hint of regret. If we fail to break the bond, Iris, You are mine forever. By magic, not by choice. And if we succeed, she countered, a ghost of a smile touching her lips, we are both free. Free to walk away, or free to choose each other. That is the risk I've been waiting to take, Kaelen. He stared at her for a long, silent moment, the power of her conviction humbling him. Then, he nodded once, a gesture of absolute commitment. Tonight, we face the magic. And whatever the result, Iris Verick, I will never let you go again. Chapter 12. Preparation and Doubt. The news of the upcoming ritual swept through the Silverfong compound like wildfire. A few of the older warriors grumbled about the risk of dabbling in witch healer magic, but Torvin's steadfast loyalty and Kaelen's absolute command silenced any overt dissent. Kaelen ordered the pack to prepare the central fire pit for the ceremony. The pack council was instructed to gather their combined alpha-beta energy needed to form a protective perimeter. The secrecy was paramount, as a ritual of this magnitude could attract dark forces, or worse, rival packs eager to exploit the alpha's vulnerability. As the sun began to set, casting long crimson shadows across the courtyard, Kaelen found Iris in the alpha's guest room, setting up her final preparations. She was drawing runes in fine chalk on the leather straps that would bind the amethyst to the stone altar. Lily, wearing her silver wolf necklace, was curled on the bed, quietly watching her mother, completely unfazed by the impending magical confrontation. Her young eyes were a beacon of trust, a constant reminder of the stakes. I need to know everything, Iris, Kaelen said, leaning against the doorframe, his arms crossed over his massive chest. He was dressed in only simple, dark fighting leathers, his physique radiating controlled power. Tell me the steps of the ritual. The failure point. I will not walk in blind. Iris wiped her hands on a cloth, her movements precise and calm despite the tremor she couldn't hide. The ritual requires a complete, unshielded energy transfer. I will place the purified amethyst over the mark. You will then, using your alpha power, cut into my flesh to draw blood, mixing it with the magic of the scar and the crystal. Your alpha blood is the key, it's the catalyst that forces the power to decide its final course. She met his gaze, her expression solemn. If the residual magic is still strong enough to bind, the mark will disappear, and our physical mating will commence, irreversible. If, however, my 6 years of separation and binding rituals have weakened the coercive power enough, the mark will remain for a moment, the bond will be broken, and the power will transfer entirely into the crystal. That is the failure point, Kaelen. The difference is the disappearance or the momentary delay of the mark. Kaelen felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. The failure point was his forced ownership of her. The success point was her freedom, the choice to walk away. And if the ritual fails entirely? Then the energy, unable to be contained, will lash out. It will target the strongest, purest life force nearby to stabilize itself, Lily. That is the one true failure we cannot afford. Kaelen pushed off the doorframe, crossing the room in 2 strides. He took her hands, his eyes burning with a fierce resolve. We will succeed. We will not fail, Lily. And when the ritual is complete, when the magic has been contained, you will stand free before me. And that is when I will ask you to be my Luna, Iris. When you have the absolute choice to say no. Iris's eyes softened, a sudden rush of love washing away the fear. That is the choice I have waited 6 years for, Kaelen Verick. As he pulled her into a deep, desperate kiss, a true kiss of a mate, the door creaked open. Torvin stood there, his face unreadable. Alpha, he said, his eyes flicking from the intimacy of the moment to the chalk runes. I have something you must see. I ran a detailed pack history search on ancient healer markings. The crescent moon. It is not a single binding ritual. It is a sign of the healer's legacy, a bloodline that must choose a mate before the age of 27 or risk spontaneous magical combustion. Iris is 26. You have limited time, Alpha, and the consequence of failure is far darker than you know. The plot thickened again. The curse was not just a consequence of one healing ritual, but a long-forgotten fatal flaw in Iris's own powerful bloodline. Chapter 13. The Healer's Legacy. Kaelen looked at Torvin, then back at Iris, whose face had gone pale. The original plot, the forced mating, had been layered with a terrifying new urgency. Iris's own life was on a timer. You knew about this, Iris? Kaelen's voice was low, laced with hurt. Iris sank onto the bed beside Lily, placing her hands over the throbbing mark on her lower back. I knew the symptoms were similar to the bloodline curse, but I never confirmed it. My mother abandoned our line when I was very young, specifically to escape the mating demand. The crescent mark usually only appears when the healer has performed a life-altering act of magic, like saving an alpha's life. I believed the mark was solely the price of saving you, not the manifestation of my bloodline's doom. Torvin, sensing the shift in the alpha's energy, stepped fully into the room. The texts indicate the legacy stems from a compact made centuries ago between a powerful witch healer and the moon goddess. The compact granted immense healing power but demanded the healer find a compatible, powerful mate before a specific age. If they failed, the unchecked magic in their bloodline would consume them, turning them into a magical void. Iris is 26. Her birthday is 3 months away. The stakes had just been raised to an impossible level. The ritual tonight wasn't just about breaking a forced bond, it was about stopping Iris's impending magical annihilation. If they succeeded and broke the magical bond, they would still have to contend with the bloodline curse, forcing Kaelen to woo her quickly, or lose her forever. If they failed, they would be mated, saving her life, but stripping her of her choice. 3 months, Kaelen repeated, his eyes narrowed. He was no longer just an alpha, he was a desperate man fighting a ticking clock. The ritual must happen now. And we need to find the counter-ritual for the legacy curse as soon as this is over. Torvin, you will bring all available historical records to the main hall now. Every scroll, every text. We will work through the night. Kaelen turned to Iris, his hands cupping her face. Listen to me, Iris. Tonight, you and I are going to face this magic. We will break the bond, and then, I am going to spend the next 3 months proving to you that I am the mate you choose. We will defeat the legacy curse together. But if we break the bond and the legacy curse is still active, Iris argued, her voice catching, it will speed up the magical combustion. The forced bond, at least, stabilizes the power, even if it denies me my will. I know, Kaelen stated, his thumb gently stroking her cheek. But I will not take away your choice. We will break the bond. I demand your free will, Iris. And I will not rest until you are safe, and mine by choice. Kaelen kissed her again, a deep, powerful kiss of love, commitment, and utter recklessness. He then looked at Lily, who was now awake and watching, her small face mirroring her mother's intensity. Lily, Kaelen commanded, you will stay here. With the sister of the beta. You will not leave this room, no matter what noises you hear. This is the most important mission of your life, little wolf. We need you to be safe. Lily nodded, her sea-green eyes holding a terrifyingly adult understanding. I will be safe, Daddy. Fix Mom. Chapter 14. The Ritual of Fire and Blood. The central courtyard of the Silverfong compound was a scene of controlled, potent tension. A ring of torch-bearing warriors stood as a perimeter, their alpha energy forming a protective shell. The pack council members stood at the 4 cardinal points of the large fire pit, chanting the ancient wards. In the center, Kaelen had built a small stone altar, upon which Iris placed the amethyst crystal, now vibrating with a contained, dark power. Iris stood before Kaelen, her back to him, her tunic shed to the waist, revealing the throbbing crescent mark that glowed like a malevolent moon. She was calm, her fear replaced by a chilling resolve. Kaelen took his place behind her, his large hands resting on her shoulders, grounding her with his immense strength. His hunting knife, sharp and steeped in generations of Veric alpha blood, rested on the altar beside the crystal. We begin, Iris announced, her voice echoing in the sudden silence. She began to chant, a series of complex, melodic runes that were part prayer, part command. The magical mark on her back pulsed faster, and the air around them dropped in temperature, a cold, unnatural chill that made the warriors shiver. The chanting intensified. Iris's voice strained as she channeled all her life force into the ritual, forcing the toxic, coercive magic to the surface. The crescent mark flared to a blinding, angry violet. Kaelen felt the surge of power, a raw, unstable energy that threatened to overwhelm his senses. He gripped Iris's shoulders, pouring his alpha energy into her, acting as the stabilizing buffer she needed. Now, Kaelen. The incision. Iris gasped, her body trembling violently. The blood must mix at the peak of the transfer. Kaelen reached for the knife, his hand steady despite the internal struggle of his wolf. He had never intended to harm her, but this was the final desperate step to save her. He pressed the razor-sharp edge of the Veric knife against her skin, just above the crescent mark. With a deep, controlled breath, he drew a small, shallow cut. A bead of his own powerful alpha blood instantly welled up, mixing with the dark, residual magic leaching from the scar. The moment the blood mixed, the ritual reached its climax. The amethyst crystal on the altar flared with a brilliant white light, pulling the dark energy into itself with the force of a vacuum. Kaelen watched, his heart hammering in his chest, for the telltale sign, the mark. For one agonizing second, the crescent mark disappeared entirely, leaving behind only the small wound from his knife. Kaelen's wolf roared in triumph. Mate. Mine. A desperate possessive urge to claim her on the spot. He had failed, the magical bond was complete. Then, just as quickly, the dark violet crescent reappeared, shimmering faintly before it finally faded into a faint, pale scar. The mark had delayed its disappearance. Iris's body slumped against him in exhaustion, and the coercive, forcing power of the magic vanished completely. Success. They had broken the forced magical bond. But as the pack cheered and rushed forward, the relief on Kaelen's face was short-lived. A new, much fainter mark began to appear a few inches above the old scar, a tiny silver half-moon. Chapter 15, The Half-Moon and the Legacy's Demand. Kaelen held Iris tightly, his bloodied hand cradling her spent body. The relief of the successful transfer was immense, but the appearance of the new, subtle mark sent a fresh wave of dread through him. "Iris," he murmured, gently guiding her to sit on the stone altar, pulling a protective cloak around her. "The mark. The crescent is gone, but there is a new one." Iris, weak but lucid, reached back and felt the skin with trembling fingers. She frowned as she touched the barely visible, silver half-moon. Torvin pushed through the crowd, holding a large, ancient scroll, his eyes wide with alarm. "Alpha. I found the secondary text. The silver half-moon. It is the final warning of the healer's legacy." He quickly unrolled the heavy parchment. "The forced transfer ritual," he read, his voice urgent, "does not negate the legacy curse. It only transfers the unstable, residual power. The silver half-moon appears 3 months before the healer's 27th birthday. It signifies the start of the final countdown. The healer's body is now magically clean, but the genetic bloodline curse remains active." Iris's eyes met Kaelen's, a look of profound, terrifying realization passing between them. "The legacy curse cannot be broken by a transfer," Iris whispered, the strength returning to her voice, tinged with fatalism. "It is not a magic to be countered. It is a pact to be fulfilled." Kaelen felt the cold sweat of fear on his brow. "Fulfilled how, Iris? What does the pact demand?" Torvin read the final lines of the scroll, his voice dropping to a grave whisper. "The healer's legacy demands a complete, freely chosen, and magically binding union with her true mate before the onset of the final moon phase. The union must be completed physically, spiritually, and with the full consent of both parties. Failure to fulfill the pact results in the healer's essence being used to power the next generation, consuming her life force completely." The plot twist was complete. They had broken the forced magical bond, giving Iris the choice she craved. But in doing so, they had accelerated the legacy curse. Iris was now free to choose, but she only had 3 months to make that choice, and that choice had to be Kaelen. 3 months, Kaelen stated, his eyes blazing with a desperate, all-consuming resolve. He reached out and cupped her face, his gaze locking with hers. "I fought the magic to give you your freedom, Iris. Now, I will fight the clock to make you my Luna by choice. I have 3 months to show you that my love is stronger than any curse, any pact, and any fear. Get your rest, Iris Veric. Because tomorrow, my mate, the wooing begins." He lifted her into his arms, a protective, possessive snarl rumbling low in his chest, daring the pack, daring the curse, daring fate itself to stand in the way of his 3-month campaign for her heart. The fight to save her life had just become the fight for her love. Chapter 16, The Alpha's Courtship. Kaelen Veric was a master strategist, a ruthless negotiator, and a battlefield genius. He was, however, a complete failure at traditional courtship. The day after the ritual, he approached the task with the same grim determination he used for planning a territory siege. He sent his best warriors on missions to retrieve gifts of value, resulting in Iris receiving a mountain of objects that were either completely impractical or slightly terrifying: a rare white timber wolf pelt, too big to use, a hoard of ancient, worthless silver coins, too heavy to carry, and a massive hunting bow, too strong to draw. Iris found him sitting on his veranda, scowling at the useless pile, dressed in his full alpha leathers. He looked more ready for war than a date. "You look distressed, Alpha," Iris commented, stepping onto the veranda, a smile touching her lips. "The gifts are wrong," Kaelen grumbled, pushing the timber wolf pelt with his boot. "They are objects of status. They do not convey affection. They convey that you are the wealthiest, most powerful wolf in the territory," Iris countered gently, sitting beside him. "Which I already knew. Kaelen, I left you because I wanted to choose you, not because I was looking for a dowry. These things," she waved at the spoils, "belong to the Alpha. I need the man." "The man is a warrior," Kaelen confessed, running a frustrated hand through his dark hair. "I know how to command, how to protect, how to fight. I do not know how to woo." Lily, having finished her breakfast, skipped onto the veranda, adjusting the silver wolf pendant. She had become Kaelen's shadow, watching the dynamic with a child's direct honesty. "It's easy, Daddy," Lily announced, placing her small hand on Kaelen's knee. "Mommy likes wildflowers. And stories. And she liked when you talked to her about the moon when we were camping." Kaelen looked at the small child, then at the elegant, weary woman who had risked everything for her. The answer was in their simple, rogue past, not his opulent present. The Silent Peaks, Kaelen decided, the name a whisper of the place they first fell in love. "I can't leave the compound for long, but I can bring a piece of it here." He stood up, his warrior posture softening with a new purpose. "Lily, show me where the wild thyme grows." For the rest of the day, the formidable alpha of the Silverfong pack was seen doing the most un-alpha-like things, awkwardly gathering wild mountain thyme and bluebells, kneeling in the dirt beside his daughter, his huge hands meticulously tying the fragile stems together. He then led Iris to the highest turret of his home, where he had recreated a small, mossy patch of her former home, laid out a blanket, and served her strong, herbal tea. As the sun set, they sat together, the scent of wild herbs surrounding them, the pack a distant memory. He told her a simple story, not of battle, but of his early years as a boy, running through the forests, clumsy and full of doubts. "I have never been so vulnerable to anyone as I am to you," he admitted, looking at the silver half-moon on her skin, now visible in the twilight. "I have 3 months to convince you, not with power, but with my truth. Tell me, Iris, what is the one thing I can do to earn your free will?" Iris leaned into his side, finding a comfort she hadn't allowed herself in 6 years. "Show me that the Alpha is ready to share his weakness, Kaelen. Not just his strength. Show me you trust me with your heart, completely, without the fear of the pack's judgment." Chapter 17, Lessons in Love and Legacy. Kaelen took Iris's request to heart, leading to a period of unprecedented openness for the Alpha of the Silverfong pack. He showed her the deepest scars, not the ones on his body, but the ones on his soul, the loss of his father, the crushing weight of Alpha responsibility, and his paralyzing fear of failing the pack. Iris, in turn, opened up about the constant fear of the legacy, the isolation of her life on the run, and the agonizing decision to conceal his daughter. Their nights were spent not in passion, but in shared confessions, building a foundation of emotional honesty that the magic had tried to force 6 years ago. "The legacy is more than just a mating pact," Iris mused one evening, as she worked on a new herbal tincture, the small silver half-moon on her back glowing softly. "It is an alignment. The curse wants to use my power, Kaelen, but the pact wants to share it. It requires a true mate who does not seek to control the healer's power, but to protect its nature." At that moment, Torvin knocked, carrying another stack of scrolls from the vault. He had been working tirelessly, trying to find the precise requirements for the magically binding union. "Alpha, Luna," Torvin announced, using the titles with quiet respect. "I believe I have found the key to the Legacy Pact. The final act is not simply a mating ceremony. It is the vow of the shared sacrifice. Torvin unrolled a heavy scroll, pointing to a passage illustrated with two wolves sharing a heart-shaped fire. The legacy demands that the healer's mate must willingly give up a piece of his own life's purpose, something central to his being, as an offering to the pact. This sacrifice is mirrored by the healer, who must then accept that purpose as her own. It proves the bond is one of mutual giving, not just taking. Kaelen's jaw tightened. A piece of my life's purpose? What does that even mean for an alpha? Your life's purpose is to lead the Silverfang pack, Torvin stated grimly. The ultimate sacrifice for an alpha is to give up a permanent, unchangeable symbol of his alpha status. To willingly weaken his core power. Iris's eyes widened in horror. No, Kaelen. We can't ask that of you. You are the alpha. To weaken your core power is to invite war and dissent. And to let the curse consume you is to lose my future, Kaelen countered, his gaze intense. The legacy curse is a test of love, Iris. It is asking me to choose you over my power. It's the ultimate choice of man over wolf. He took her hands, his thumb tracing the new, faint scar on her back. I will fulfill the vow of the shared sacrifice. I will give up whatever the pact demands. We will figure out the ultimate alpha sacrifice that saves your life without destroying the pack. His absolute willingness to sacrifice his power for her love was the most potent, most romantic wooing gesture of all. It was the moment Iris truly allowed herself to believe in the depth and purity of his love, free of the coercive magic. The legacy was demanding his power, but he was offering his heart. Chapter 18, The Shadow of the Past. The decision to fulfill the vow of the shared sacrifice seemed to send ripples through the magical world. 2 weeks after the revelation, the compound was hit by a coordinated attack. It wasn't the rival faction, it was the desperate rogues Kaelen's men had fought before, now led by a powerful, scarred beta, drawn by the residual energy of the recent rituals and the impending legacy fulfillment. Kaelen's defense was immediate and brutal. He shifted instantly, a massive midnight black wolf with eyes of molten gold, leading his pack into the fray. Iris and Lily were secured in the hidden tunnels, but Iris's instincts screamed at her to help. The rogues were organized, fighting dirty, and one of them managed to flank Kaelen, sinking a knife deep into his shoulder before the alpha could react. Kaelen roared, the pain searing, but he continued to fight, covering his beta's advance. Seeing her mate fall, seeing the blood of the man she loved staining the earth, something broke within Iris. It wasn't just fear, it was a powerful, primal command to protect. The silver half-moon on her back pulsed violently, and her sea-green eyes glowed with an internal, ethereal light. Iris didn't hesitate. She pushed Lily into the care of the guarding warrior. I will be back, little wolf. I promise. Then, for the first time in her life, she let the full, unchecked power of the healer's legacy surge through her. Instead of the massive, fearsome shift of the Veric line, Iris's body streamlined and contracted. With a silent, blinding flash of light, she shifted into a wolf form unlike any the Silverfang pack had ever seen, a lithe, silver-furred creature, smaller than the typical shifter, with a speed that defied physics. The silver half-moon mark was now a band of pure light on her flank. She was a shifter. The ultimate hidden secret. She was not a mere rogue healer, she was a powerful, late-blooming shifter, one whose identity had been suppressed by the fear of the legacy. The Silverfang warriors gasped in shock. Kaelen, bleeding and fighting, saw the silver wolf dart into the fray, moving with the cunning of an earth spirit. She was a hurricane of claws and teeth, a protector wolf focused entirely on covering his flank. She was his equal, his true mate. The silver wolf, Iris, slashed at the rogue beta that had injured Kaelen, her speed too fast for his eyes to follow. She cornered the threat, not killing, but using her magic-laced claws to disarm and paralyze. When the last of the rogues fled, defeated and terrified by the silver ghost, Iris stood over Kaelen's wounded form, her silver fur catching the torchlight. She looked down at him, her golden-green eyes full of a fierce, protective love. Kaelen shifted back, staggering but grinning through the pain. You were hiding that, Luna, he rasped, his eyes burning with admiration. Iris shifted back, her clothes magically intact, her silver half-moon mark blazing with triumphant light. I ran to protect my free will, she said, kneeling to examine his wound, her fingers already glowing with healing light. But I will shift, and I will fight to protect my choice. I am your mate, Kaelen Varric. I am no longer choosing my freedom from you. I am choosing my freedom with you. Chapter 19. The Final Choice. 2 days before the 3-month deadline, the Silverfong compound was quiet. Kaelen's wound was healing rapidly, and the legacy mark on Iris's back was a fierce, insistent silver. The time for the vow of the shared sacrifice was at hand. Kaelen did not prepare a lavish ceremony. He led Iris and Lily to the clearing where they had first spoken of his paternity, the same muddy bluff now transformed by spring flowers. He had spent his final day of courtship in his workshop, not on pack duties. He knelt before Iris, Lily standing beside her, holding her mother's hand. He ignored the ticking clock of the curse and spoke only from his heart. I love the rogue healer who saved my life, Kaelen began, his voice deep and solemn. I love the fierce mother who protected my daughter. And I love the silver wolf who fought at my side, my equal in power and spirit. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small, simple object, a small wooden wolf, carved clumsily, but clearly from his own hands. The wood was the dark, unyielding Varric pine. This is my sacrifice, Kaelen announced, his eyes never leaving hers. It is not a piece of gold or a weapon. It is the carving of the wolf who belongs to my heart. I am Alpha Kaelen, but I am also Kaelen the man. My life's purpose is to lead, but my ultimate purpose is to love. For my shared sacrifice, I give up the right to ever command you, Iris. I willingly vow to treat your choice, your spirit, and your identity as a rogue healer and a silver shifter, as the highest priority of my life. I will never ask you to be less than you are for the sake of the pack. I give up the Alpha's absolute right to control his Luna. He held out the carving. Iris Varric, I offer you my absolute trust, my eternal respect, and my undying love. Be my Luna. Be my equal. Be my chosen mate. Iris's eyes were filled with tears of joy and profound relief. He had truly understood. He had sacrificed the core of his Alpha identity, the right to command, to preserve her most cherished value, her freedom. She took the small, clumsy carving. Kaelen Varric, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. I choose you. Freely, completely, and eternally. My sacrifice is my fear. I vow to never hide my true self from you again, and to accept your power as our shared protection. I accept your sacrifice. I accept your love. As their lips met in the most powerful kiss of their lives, a brilliant gold light erupted from Kaelen's chest, fusing with the silver light emanating from Iris's back. The two lights spiraled, intertwining, forming a single, brilliant aura around them. The pact was fulfilled. The choice was made. Chapter 20. The Unbreakable Bond. The vow of the shared sacrifice was accepted by the magic. The next evening, under the light of a full, powerful moon, Kaelen and Iris stood before the gathered pack. The silver half-moon on Iris's back was now a single, faint silver line, the final, permanent scar of a curse successfully overcome. They performed the simple, final ritual, a joining of hands over a roaring fire. Their joined blood dripped onto the amethyst crystal, now resting on a new, permanent pedestal in the Alpha's hall. The crystal flared once, binding their energies, not by force, but by choice. By the power of the moon goddess, and the will of the Alpha and the chosen mate, Torvin announced to the pack, his voice filled with pride. The legacy pact is fulfilled. The Varric line is forever secured. We present to you Alpha Kaelen Varric and Luna Iris Varric. The pack roared its approval, the sound a wave of acceptance and relief. The final act was the introduction of the heir. Kaelen and Iris led Lily forward, the little girl standing proudly between her parents. This is Lily Varric, Kaelen announced, placing his hand on his daughter's head. Our daughter, the heir. She is the living proof that a mate's love, freely chosen, is the only magic strong enough to defeat any curse. Iris smiled at the pack, then at her husband, her true mate. I ran up to the fiercest Alpha in the territories and told him my mom was a healer, she murmured to Kaelen, recalling their impossible beginning. And you led me to my fate, my love, Kaelen responded, pulling her close. He looked down at Lily, the daughter who had started it all. Lily looked up at her mother, then her father, both standing strong, both free, both in love. "I knew you just needed my mommy's help," Lily declared with a final, sweet certainty. The Alpha, the Luna, and the Heir stood united, the legacy curse a forgotten story, their future a blank page written only by their choice. Kaelen had his free-willed mate, Iris had her cherished freedom, and the most emotional, romantic story of the Silverfang pack had just begun.